drinking a lot more in my corporate career. We're dumbing down our brain and we're spending a lot of money to do that. And like you mentioned at a restaurant, it's expected. Like I almost feel
Yeah.
apologetic that I'm ordering water because they want you to order something, like they're like, what? You're not drinking? So I almost feel apologetic these days. But hey, my restaurant bills are really cheap now. I don't know if you know about this back like the 1930s through the 50s. Another scam that was going on was the tobacco companies were
Hmm.
literally paying doctors to prescribe cigarettes.
You could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello, everyone. Today we're meeting Mary Beth Schrudder. She is a podcast host, an author, and also a spiritual and transformational life coach. Hello, Mary Beth. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Anna. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
Yes, can't wait to start. So let's start a conversation from diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. So, what led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Gosh, I didn't discover my passion in life until I was in my 40s. So, for anyone listening, it's never too late. I just want to make sure everyone hears that because my life has done a complete 180 in my 40s. And it started out with I had a lot of addiction struggle. I was in the corporate world, and, it's really hard for us to even notice that we have an addiction, especially with alcohol in today's world where it's so glamorized, it's so normal. And it's interesting. I've been 5 years alcohol free, and at the age 50, I'm the weirdo who doesn't drink now because everywhere you go, people are like, why aren't you drinking? I always say it's the one drug you don't have to justify not doing, but I mean, that you have to justify why you're not doing it instead of justifying why you're doing it, right? It's very
Yeah.
interesting. So yeah, basically, I think all of my addiction problems stem from childhood. A lot of us have had like childhood traumas, and I definitely had that going on, as well as being a super sensitive person in general. So that's where a lot of the addiction gets started because all we're doing is we're trying to self-soothe. We want to feel better. So like things that happen later in life as an adult is stems from that. Like we're just trying to either numb ourselves, not feel any feelings that maybe that we've been pushing down since childhood. We don't want to think about these things that we never dealt with, that we should have dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these days I'm a coach. I'm the founder of Day One Life Coaching, and the reason I chose to do spiritual recovery, this is spiritual recovery from any type of addiction, spirit, and it's also just helping people find their purpose and path in life. Because a lot of times when we're not doing our calling, what we're meant to do, that leads to anxiety, depression, things like that. Because we are creators. Every day we're supposed to wake up happy and joyful and like excited to start the day, but it's not really that common these days. A lot of us don't wake up happy, especially like me. When I that's kind of why I started drinking a lot more in my corporate career, is because I hated my job. And I think it's so common because we're sitting in cubicle world, right? And these
Mm-hmm.
fluorescent lighting, and we're away from nature. And I
Right.
really feel like we're supposed to be like having so much more of a human experience than this, right? And it gets depressing. So, I could get off work and always have someone to drink with and go to happy hour. And, it's very easy to do. Red wine was my vice. I couldn't recognize I even had a problem because I always had people with me. And I felt like I earned it. Like today was a hard day. I need a glass
Mm,
of wine, and I think most of us can relate to that. Like I
right.
deserve it. Like I earned it. And it was actually what I found out. I was self-sabotaging myself.
Mm.
But I think a lot of us can relate to that. I was just trying to escape the day and really my reality.
Yes, and like you just mentioned, we for some reason normalize the alcohol
addiction.
consumption, first of all, alcohol consumption became norm, and everywhere you go, they just ask you what you're gonna drink, and they expect you to drink alcohol. So it's like water, they look at it that it's nothing really serious about it. But the more we normalize this type of behavior, the more we kind of like not seeing what destructive nature it holds for our well-being. And the more we become aware and really understanding that those kind of substances, including alcohol, are addictions, and it's just a way for us to escape from that present reality that we're in, and to be aware, to be with our feelings, to let ourselves feel whatever comes up in order to start the healing process. Because otherwise, we just like kind of like suppress everything. And like you said, it could manifest into being depressed, and then anxious, and whatever else could come up because of that, behavior that you engaged in. But first thing, I think we have to become aware and really understand what's good for us in terms of consumption, food, drinks, and those substances. We just need to kind of like stop and eliminate that from our um, daily life. And I know it's hard. It's hard because it's a habit. Like if we really look at it, the essence of it, it became a habit because we repeated it so many times and we normalized it, and it's just part of what we do. But how can somebody break that habit for good? Like what helped you and your clients that you work with? And what kind of the process that they're going through, what will come up for them in order to sabotage the process, what they can do to overcome those challenges in order to really stop doing that for good.
Well, there's so many things that we can do, and it's definitely a journey. We won't be able to hit all of them in a podcast episode, but I can give a lot of good practical tips and insights. So, first of all, like you said, alcohol. Well, it's a depressant, right? So it does it does depress us, and it kind of feels like to me the one of the biggest scams out there, because we're dumbing down our brain and we're spending a lot of money to do that. And like you mentioned, at a restaurant, it's expected. Like I almost feel
Yeah.
apologetic that I'm ordering water because they want you to order something, like they're like, what? You're not drinking? So I almost feel apologetic these days. But hey, my restaurant bills are really cheap now, considering, because I used to order like a bottle of wine at dinner. But I don't know if you know about this, back like the 1930s through the 50s. Another scam that was going on was the tobacco companies were literally paying doctors to prescribe cigarettes and to say they're healthy. And I feel like that's kind of, we're in that phase of alcohol right now where nobody realizes how bad it is. A lot of one huge practical tip is knowledge, like just knowing, like, so here's a funny story. About 6 years ago, I decided I'm going to add on addiction recovery as a niche. I never saw myself as an addict, even though like my mom and some friends, some people had told me like, you drink way too much. I was like, whatever, you're just being controlling, or I'm fun and you're lame, right? That was my attitude. I couldn't see it yet. I was still in denial, which is a huge part. And an addiction is really just like you said earlier, it's a habit that goes awry. It gets out of control. It's just a habit that gets out of control. So try not to make it like, oh no, I'm an addict. And then you make it this big deal that becomes impossible to get over it. Look, I drank for 30 years. I'm 50 years old now. I actually, if I do it and I drink every day, like anybody can. Okay. So there's your hope right there. But essentially I started to learn about addiction recovery, and I recognized it. Like the more knowledge, I was like, oh my gosh, I resonated with this. I was like, that's me. Like if you can't give something up for a week, for instance, and it gives you anxiety to let go of alcohol for a week, that's a problem. Like that's something you need to look at, because that's an addiction, especially if it has any negative effect on your life, even if it's just your sleep. Because so essentially, since it's a depressant, what our body does is create stimulants to counteract it. That's just natural. Our body's doing what it should do. So anyone listening, if you notice, like, let's say you drink in the evenings, and you notice you're waking up in the middle of the night, maybe with like your heart's racing a little bit, maybe some racing thoughts, kind of like feeling overstimulated at like 2 or 3 a.m. Think about when your last drink was, because what happens is after our about 4 hours or 5 hours after our last alcoholic beverage, that wears off. And then all we're left with is those stimulants that our body created, which is what it's supposed to do. And it gets worse and worse over time, these stimulants. Okay. Moderation becomes impossible. So, like, even for instance, before I quit drinking, if I only had one glass of wine, it would still happen like really bad. Like I would just wake up at 3 a.m. overstimulated, even if I had one glass. So that's why moderation quits working, because our body chemistry changes over time and has a different reaction to it than when we were younger. But so that's huge. That was a huge wake up call for me. So maybe someone listening, that could be a wake up call. Like, are you noticing that? Well, it's because of the alcohol. You don't have insomnia. Because when I quit drinking, all of these problems went away. I thought I had insomnia most of my life. I just thought I was a bad sleeper, but it was the alcohol. And then more knowledge is that alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen, and a carcinogen means it causes cancer. And it's right up there with tobacco and asbestos. Remember asbestos? So it's right up there with these horrible products. And we don't put that on the labels. You're not going to find this on labels, even though you'll find all these warnings on cigarettes. You won't find it on alcohol, because it's on purpose, because they want to keep selling it, right? So that's why I called it a big scam, because they're not letting you know that the carcinogen effect it's really linked to 7 different types of cancer. And I believe it's actually more than that, but there's 7 that it's linked to scientifically. It lowers your immune system, and just really learning about, and it sounds crazy because I also teach law of attraction, but I'm actually saying in this case, when you're trying to quit something, focus on the negative things about it. Start reading all the negative if you're trying to quit, because then you're going to gain that knowledge, and it's going to be harder for you're going to think about it more, because a lot of this, I knew alcohol was bad for my liver. I knew that. Like, I'm like, but it's, I'm going to take some supplements. I'll take milk thistle and some B vitamins, and thinking I'm making up for all this damage I'm doing. But there's no amount of supplements you can take to make up for it, including just the loss of sleep is just affects your whole endocrine system. It dysregulates your hormones. I'm sure you have a lot of female listeners. Like my hormones were so imbalanced and everything, even at 50 years old, I feel amazing compared to when I was, 30 years old drinking. I feel better at 50 without the alcohol. So knowledge is a huge thing. There's a lot of, since I teach spiritual recovery, there's a lot of things like meditation that helps, because we really want to quiet our minds and do breath work and things like that, because what that's going to do is help us feel our feelings. It's going to bring us self-awareness, and self-awareness is like the first step. We get out of denial, and we got to look at these things that we've been stuffing down. And sometimes it's not alcohol. Sometimes it's food. Food is a huge one. I was also a food addict, and namely sugar. Sugar was very difficult for me to quit. I almost feel like it was harder for me than alcohol. So quitting sugar, and because it's so addictive and we crave what we eat. So it's very interesting. If anyone's having a hard time with sugar, I got to tell you, sometimes abstinence is the answer. Not all of us have the ability to moderate. I suck at moderation. Moderation, some people can dial it up, dial it down. I'm all in or all out. So abstinence is great for me. As long as I don't eat sugar, I don't crave sugar, it just goes away. So I don't crave cocaine because I don't have it in my system, for example. You know what I mean? We really crave what we put in our system, and it sucks while you're going through withdrawals of sugar and caffeine and alcohol. It sucks for a while, but it takes about 3 days to get that out of your system. And then after that, it's just more of a mental, emotional, a little battle, that becomes our struggle, because then we're no longer physically addicted at that after 3 days. It just becomes an emotional struggle.
Wow, yes, it's just really a journey of choosing first your health. You have to start prioritizing your health and honoring that you deserve of having the best that you put in your body, the best how you treat yourself, your mind, everything. And it comes back to really like providing yourself what's good for you. If
Yeah.
you know the like you said, the science behind certain substances, if you looked into the research and you know how bad it is, like why would you choose that? And if you really honor yourself, you wouldn't, like, I usually look at it like that. How would you treat your own child, right?
Yeah.
Would you suggest that to your kid? Really, like, go ahead, try it, right? Trying is one thing, but then continue doing that, it keeps creating harm, right? So pretty much we have to remind ourselves, what is it that I can focus on that could bring more of a healthy choices in my life? How can I support my health, mental or physical health every day? What kind of like reminders can I set up, maybe in my alarm or all around the house? I don't know, some kind of reminders for you to really notice that what I'm doing is not in alignment of how I want to treat myself. So what are your thoughts on really like creating that support system that will bring us back to the understanding that what we're doing, if we're still in addiction, is harmful?
So for me, what really helped the most, 100% was law of attraction. Like learning about law of attraction and learning it's not woo woo. It's actually science. It's not a religion either. Like a lot of
Mhm.
people think that it is. But basically for anyone who doesn't know, like they're like, what's law of attraction? Or you thought maybe it was this woo woo stuff. Essentially all it is a universal law, just like the universal law of gravity. It's happening all the time, whether you believe it or not. We're always manifesting stuff because everything's energy. Every single thing, even things that are solid, if you look at it through a microscope, it's vibrating and everything vibrates at different rates. And we really attract things through our thoughts and our feelings. So the more you learn about law of attraction, the more you realize how much control you have over your day, how much you're a powerful creator. We do create our own reality. And so I knew like, oh my gosh, like I knew
Mhm.
too much about the law of attraction. I was already teaching it. Once I started learning all of the negatives about alcohol, I could no longer have any inner peace with it. I couldn't keep it in my life because I was aware, self-aware at that point, how much I was self-sabotaging myself each day. And what we want to do is set each day up for success. You know, I'm already a life coach. Like I want to be the best life coach I can be. So knowing just how much our thoughts and our feelings are, of course, that leads to our behaviors and our actions, right? Like, and play around with it. Give yourself the evidence that you need, the scientific evidence. When you think negative thoughts and feel negative all day, how does your day go? I mean, you know, one negative thought leads to another. Our thoughts are even have an attractive, energetic spark about them, and the better it gets, the better it gets. The worse it gets, the worse it gets. The law of attraction works both ways. So we really need to start to pay attention to our thoughts, pay attention to our feelings, and just really kind of start to catch yourself and interrupt old patterns, because most people's problem is that they're thinking the same thoughts and feeling the same feelings that they were the day before, the day before, the day before. And they're living on this autopilot. They're living in their subconscious, like not conscious creative mode. So nothing changes in their life because they're doing the same stuff different day. So it really is about bringing all of this subconscious programming, making it conscious, because I think Dr. Bruce Lipton's the one who said 95% of our thoughts are subconscious and about 80% of those are negative. So you see
Mm.
how important it is to, you know, and that's what I did. You know, I had to start catching myself in my negative thought loops. And by the way, addictions, not only drugs and alcohol and things like that, sometimes addictions are overthinking, negative thinking. Those are addictions, like because people get addicted to those thought loops and it's hard to get out of them because you keep practicing it. But thinking positive actually isn't much harder. It's just that we've been more focused and more practiced on the negative. So we got to just switch it around and interrupt those old patterns. And we can change it. But even though I teach law of attraction, I'm not a good vibes only person. I really think we need to feel those feelings and look at our emotions as guidance. We feel a certain way for a reason. So we got to look at that. If,
Yeah.
if you're waking up in the morning and you're depressed, why? Don't just, ignore it and try to there's a lot of people who smoke weed to numb it out. There's so many ways, or like we talked about food, they just
Right.
all these things that they do for comfort to shove down their feelings. Instead of doing that, try to analyze, because we aren't our thoughts, we aren't our feelings, we're the witness of them. So think about, like, why am I feeling depressed today? What is about it? Because like we can change everything in our life. We just have to we have to desire to. And it's hard sometimes when you're depressed, right? Because you don't
Mm-hmm.
feel motivated, but you got to give yourself a fighting chance. You got to do things that are like the practical things. Get out in nature. That's huge. Get some, we need sunshine. So do some sun gazing. I do that every day. I do grounding, which is basically like earthing is another term
Mm.
for it, but you take off your shoes, you go barefoot outside on the ground. We don't get enough of that. And there's an electromagnetic field that we're tapping into. It's really helpful. It's very healing. Like you mentioned, the toxins, like we need to eat food that is healthy for us, because a lot of times people are depressed because they're eating processed foods. It's not even real
Yeah.
food. We're slowly poisoning ourselves with these food like products are not even real food, and we're wondering why we don't feel good and why we're depressed. There's not enough nutrients in them, and a huge cause of anxiety, depression, and all these things. Like, I was labeled with all this stuff. I'm not medicated. I don't have OCD and anxiety and depression and all this stuff anymore. Like, I was labeled with it, but really I just had really bad habits. I wasn't getting proper nutrition, and alcohol depletes your body of nutrients as well, by the way. So that's another thing.
Mm.
Of course you're feeling depressed if you're eating unhealthy and you're not getting out and you're not moving your body. Like, that's another practical tip. Every morning do something, even if it's something like just walking, anything to move your body, to get your lymphatic system going. You're just going to feel so much better. And listen to positive messaging. Follow people who are already where you want to be, and try to learn what did they do. Listen to podcasts like Anna's. She's sitting here showing you people who've transformed their lives. There's nothing special about the people. It's anyone can do it. It's just that they took action, and they're trying to
Right.
teach you can do it too. This isn't like this, we are all capable.
Definitely. And I think we just, have to give ourselves this opportunity to change. And change is uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
like you mentioned, with us, really paying attention to what kind of thoughts are we choosing to think on a daily basis, um, that how the rest of the day unravels. What if we start catching ourselves of what we're choosing to think today about ourselves? Because if we have this negative self-talk, right, uh, this creates like a pattern of
Mm-hmm.
certain behavior that we engaged in. So everything is connected. And with us really catching ourselves first, becoming aware of that negative self-talk, we can interrupt that pattern and start with replacing it with more positive kind of affirmation, I would say, or like statements.
Mm-hmm.
I think gratitude is something that we should look into. Sometimes a lot of people like journaling, reflecting, and really doing it either in the morning as a routine in the morning or before they go to bed. Just think about your day, think about yourself, and list, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 things of what are you grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you love yourself? What are the aspects of yourself, you can focus on that are positive, and you can just do it every day, and it reaffirms over time, and
Mm-hmm.
you start focusing more on that.
Yeah, appreciation is one of the highest frequencies when we talk about law of attraction, like appreciation, joy, and fun. And I think a lot of us forget to have fun in life. That's such a high frequency, and we're supposed to be creating. And so if you're feeling stuck in life, it's because you just keep regenerating the same experience over and over. You're not creating. You stop doing that, but that's why we're here. We are here to be creating our lives, and it's supposed to be joyful, it's supposed to be fun, but we need to lighten up. And I think we need to go back to like our childlike childlike
Yes.
attitude, and find that inner child, be like, okay, like what did you love doing as a child? There's a lot of hints in that,
Mhm.
like because sometimes when you're a child, you're just you don't have all this resistance and all these limiting beliefs and programming yet. And so you're not blocked from knowing like your true gifts. So try to think back to what you love doing when you're a child. There might be some insight into maybe what you're supposed to be doing in your career, because a lot of us were tricked into thinking we have to work in corporate. Like I well, this is just what you do. You go to college and then you do this and you do this, but
Mm.
you actually, that's not true. We can create our reality however we want to, but the thing that's stopping us is those limiting beliefs. And that's what, like, I help people with my coaching, and everybody's different, everybody has different programming. And that's what, if anyone who's listening knows about the law of attraction and you're thinking that doesn't work because it doesn't work for me and I've tried it. Something important to know is the law of attraction is always working, but we can only manifest what's within our personal belief system. And by the way, if you keep telling yourself it's not working, that's why it's not working. That's one thing. But there's something called a point of attraction, and it's different for everybody. And that's why it gets kind of complicated. So our point of attraction is made up of all of our programming, all of our beliefs, everything from childbirth until now. So that's a lot. And that's so different for everybody. So that's part one of our point of attraction. Part two is going to be our momentum on a certain subject. And that's different subjects, right? We could have a different momentum on relationships than we do on abundance and money, and then a different momentum on health, right? Just any subject you can think of, we all have our personal momentum going on, right? So that's the second part of our personal point of attraction. And the last part is, how do we feel right now? So those things, and that's a lot of things within those three things, right? So that's why
Yeah.
it's so individualized. And that's why it's good to ask for help, get a coach or a therapist or whatever you feel is best. So, because it's hard for us to see ourselves. And even if it's a friend that you're asking, just try to figure out, like, because it's easier for somebody else to catch you in saying a limiting belief than it is for you to catch your own. It's just how it is, because by
Mhm.
definition, they're subconscious, which means we're not conscious of them. so,
Right.
so yeah, we can only manifest things within our personal belief system. But the good news is we can change our personal belief system, and we're always attracting by our thoughts and our feelings. So it's just so important to learn that, and to, instead of what you've been doing your whole life was attracting things by default, how about let's start intentionally attracting things, deliberately creating your reality? Because what we've been doing is letting life throw us around, having knee-jerk reactions to things instead of being mindful and like responding to life. And we're still going to have, listen, I'm really good at manifesting things at this point in my life, because I've been into this since 2006 with the law of attraction. And I've attracted so much more since I let go of all these toxins in my life.
Mhm.
Like that's what I mean by it's been a 180 in my 40s. My life has changed so much since I let go of the toxic relationships. That was another thing that I had from childhood, right? Like we end up getting in
Mhm.
trauma bonds if we haven't dealt with our traumas. So that's the first thing, is getting some help with that, recognizing that you even have these feelings. Because when we shove things down, they're still in our body. They're still there. We haven't gotten rid of anything just because we're numbing ourselves out with alcohol or weed or food or a relationship, another toxic relationship. We're not getting rid of those traumas. They're still there. So we want to deal with them. It's called doing shadow work. You've probably talked about that on your show before, but
Yes.
doing shadow work is facing those rejected parts of yourself. We have to face that so we could heal it. And it's not the most fun process in the world, but it's very necessary and it can be fun. Like I think I make my coaching fun with helping people with this because I do. I make it as fun as possible to deal with the shadow stuff, the rejected parts of yourselves. And you have to be really vulnerable with somebody, in order to do this. But, with I don't attract these toxic relationships anymore that I used to do because I dealt with it. I've gotten rid of all my cravings. I don't have this void to fill because I worked with spiritual recovery. I didn't go to AA. That wasn't for me. And it actually,
Mm,
listen, if AA works for anyone who's listening, you do whatever works for you. I'm not taking that away from anyone, but it doesn't work for everybody because it goes against my spiritual belief system is that in order to change our identity, we can't stay in that old identity, like to really, really shift our energy. Like I had a complete energetic shift. Alcohol is a 0% a temptation in my life because I had that spiritual shift. I am no longer that person. I don't go in a group every day and say, I am an alcoholic. To me, that's just recreating that same identity over and over. You're staying in that old vibration. I
mhm.
never say I'm an alcoholic ever. I'm a person who used to have a bad relationship with alcohol, but I no longer do. Like that
Right.
was that, so I don't reinforce old habits. I'm just no longer that person. I've shut the window, I've locked all the doors. And a lot of people who haven't had that true energetic shift and they're doing AA and working all these programs and just really trying to go by, they didn't do spiritual recovery, they didn't really deal with all their feelings, they maybe got a sponsor or something, but they're white knuckling it. And white knuckling means you still really, really, really want it and you're counting your days. I don't do that. I don't count the days. I just know it was 5 years ago because it was my friend's birthday when I quit. So I just remember when it was, but I don't count days because if I'm sitting there focusing on that, our focus is everything. Like I'm just no longer that person. I've shifted my identity. So yeah, counting the days, white knuckling it means you really, really still are attached to that addiction, if that makes sense.
Yes. And you just mentioned something like identity. A lot of people identify themselves with certain role that they used to play in the past, let's say, with certain experiences or trauma, whatever happened to them. They saying, I am this and that, but it's not really who we are. It's not our identity, right? So it's like it's certain experiences that we had, it's certain role that we used to play, or maybe playing right now in our lives. We could be a mother, a daughter, wife. It's a role, but it's not who you are really. Who you are, it's more than that. And to really reconnect with your true nature, you have to look within. It all comes back to you, really like establishing that relationship with yourself, and also building that, like self-worth and self-belief in what you can do, because a lot of times we don't really see ourselves capable of doing certain things in life, right? And we don't even start. We already failed in our mind, let's say, and we don't think that we can do it really. And because of the attachment to a certain identity that we created in our mind, which is again, like it's just an illusion, I would say, and we are still holding on to who we used to be. And yeah, I like that you mentioned that with switching that energetic vibrational state, you create a different place from which you look and at your
It's like a
certain
paradigm
reality,
shift.
right?
Yeah,
Like
it's
a
a paradigm
shift.
shift.
So it's everything happens on energetic level. That means the vibrational state you're in, which comes back to what kind of thoughts you're thinking, what kind of feelings you're feeling, everything is contributing into your vibrational state, which, like you mentioned, creates that point of attraction, and everything unfolds in a different manner because you are operating from a different vibrational state.
Yep.
And all this is a frequency. Like if we connect it to the whole reality as being an a being with a certain frequency, and everything that comes to our life has a certain frequency. If there's a match, it's just like how it is. Yeah, and we can just really kind of explore what can we do to raise our frequency. And
Yeah.
if that comes to the, doing that shadow work, processing the emotions that were stuck in our body, that comes back to changing our habits. This is something that we are responsible of doing, because
Yeah.
otherwise we are still going to be attached to that identity, to that state that we were in the past. And it shouldn't be
Yeah.
this way. We don't have to repeat it. We're not, it's not a death sentence. It's not like we went through this experience, therefore this is who we are for the rest of our lives. It's not like this.
Yeah.
And you don't have to feel guilty. Like, you have to really release all of that, release that guilt and shame, and just move on with processing that. Learn something from it. It's just an experience. It's just a lesson for you to learn.
And I know people, I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because it's an important topic. I mean, I know people who will never let go of the identity, like they had like maybe some childhood abuse going on. And it's so sad because they really are just because they get stuck in that victim role. And I'm not saying they weren't victimized. They were, I was in a victim role for a long time too. But really what we're doing, like what I did to myself and what these people are doing is you keep letting the perpetrators win. Like you keep re-victimizing yourself over and over and over. They're not thinking about us anymore. A lot of the times they're not even alive anymore, but we're still there's a saying where they say that they're letting them live rent free in their head, right? You're letting these people live rent free in your head. And it's like, why are you still giving your power? You're giving your power away to these people. So
Yeah.
they didn't only victimize you once, now they victimize you over and over and over. And sometimes it's something happened when they were 10 years old and they're still living it as it's happening to them every day today. And it's so very sad. And so and anyone, like I said, I got out of it. Anybody can, and it's an addiction. Getting addicted to that identity is an attachment.
Yes, and we just need to find this courage. We have to face what is true. Don't, avoid the the true nature of what's happening to you. Everything is valid. Like, if
Mhm.
we are not validating of what we went through, our emotions, how we feel, we don't feel like it's important. But everything is valid, and we have to face it. We have to be honest with how we feel, what we're going through, acknowledge that, accept that all parts of us are important, and they want your attention. They begging for your attention. That's why you have certain symptoms that really like an indication for you to look, more in what is it that you're avoiding. And with us, sometimes starts with whisper, and then it gets loud, and then it screams, right?
Right.
And we get
Exactly.
to the point when, like,
You can't
it's
ignore it.
very, no, you can't. And like, it's screaming so much that you're, you can't just like do anything but to look at it. But you don't have to come to this point where something extreme happens, let's say,
Yeah, you don't have to have a rock
sometimes.
bottom. I didn't have a rock
Right.
bottom. I was running two businesses when I was drinking, but I just felt like crap every morning. And I like that was a self-sabotage part of it, and I wasn't sleeping well, but I was still very, very functional and successful. So you don't have to have a rock bottom in order to change your life. Honestly, you could change your life for vanity reasons. Like I was gaining weight, because I couldn't get away with those bad habits anymore, like not in my 40s. And so I lost 20 pounds, since like that was like, and that, whatever works. If it's vanity, that was definitely helped me quit because I'm like, oh no, I am not going to be, continue gaining weight, and I ended up by letting go of the sugar and and the alcohol, it just naturally you release the weight.
Yes, and a lot of benefits that comes with you just changing your habit towards the healthy ones. And it's just like
Emotionally, mentally too. Yeah.
everything, yeah, like holistically, when you look at your life, once you make a decision, it always comes back to your decision of making that change and willing to go through what it requires you to do. Because it takes courage, it takes commitment, it takes
Mhm.
consistency to stick with that plan that you have for that change to happen. And it will not happen overnight. And you, with you knowing that, but still being all in, you have to be all in, because
Exactly.
otherwise
You
people
can't rely on
relax.
motivation. Motivation, you guys do not rely. I get people who call me when they're motivated, and then that motivation always fades. No, even Olympic athletes aren't always motivated. You can't rely on that. Just like Anna's saying, you rely on commitment and discipline, because motivation is not going to stick with you. It's going to come and go. It's going to like waves.
Yeah, you can be motivated enough to do something about your life. You can still listen to, podcasts and some motivational speeches. It will help you set the mood. But in the end of the day, if you're not committed, if you're not all in, you can just come back to the previous identity that you used to have easily,
Easy.
because uh, it's just your own inner motivation. It's the purpose behind it. It's why. Why are you doing
Yeah.
this?
Remember why you got started.
Yes. And if your why is not strong enough, anything outside of you, all external circumstances could be another reason why you stop doing that.
So true.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had this conversation. And
Me
for
too.
those who would like to connect with you online, how can they find you?
Gosh, day1lifecoaching.com. That's my website, DAYONE, lifecoaching.com. But I'm on every platform. If you want to just follow me, I'm on Instagram, TikTok. I got 2 Facebook pages. I have a YouTube podcast called Spiritual Transformation with Mary Beth. And if it sounds like something I said resonated with you and you think maybe I might want to do one-on-one coaching, I'm not sure. I do offer a free discovery call, which just is a Zoom call with me one-on-one, where you tell me a little bit about what you're looking for, what goals you might have. I tell you a little bit about how I work, and we decide if we're a good match. If I'm not a good match for you, maybe I can guide you to someone or something else that might be a better match. So that's free. Just go to my website, day1lifecoaching.com. And for your listeners, I would like to offer them $10 off of my addiction recovery with the law of attraction deck of cards. It's 44 cards. Every card teaches the law of attraction without the nonsense misconceptions. There's a lot of misconceptions with the law of attraction out there. And every card has the techniques, the practical steps to take each day, the stuff that I used personally to break my addictions. And like I said, it teaches you law of attraction. Some people just use them as a positive way to start their day, but you just pick a card, turn it over, and follow the instructions for the day. And that's all you do. So I'll do $10 off. And what I'll do is a coupon code intern.
All right.
Intern, all one word. I'll do that coupon code.
Yes, and I'm gonna add that into show notes as well. So for those who would like to explore, they can look it up and use that coupon code and see how it's gonna help them in their daily life. And thank you so much for being a guest on my show. And as we close today, what would be the final thought for our listeners?
Gosh, just that it's never too late to change, never too late. And again, you don't have to hit a rock bottom. And just remember, life is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be having fun. So we got to bring some of that frequency back into your life. If you're not having fun, that's a sign that it's time to make some changes.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day.
You too.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.